Hi, my name is Ashley Stockwell. I'm the Waste and Recycling Education Officer for Townsville City Council. I'm here today to teach you about worm farms and how to use your worm farm. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to add a layer of newspaper to each of the trays. This is going to stop your worms from falling through to the bottom tray. After you've added your newspaper, you're then ready to get your worm bedding block and expand it in a bucket of water. So follow the directions on the worm bedding. Once your worm bedding is expanded, you can then add it to the top tray. You're going to add all of the worm bedding to the top tray only. Once you have your worm bedding in, you're then ready to add your worms. We're going to then add our worms just straight on top of the worm bedding, and then you want to cover them with a worm blanket. That worm blanket can be anything from cardboard, newspaper, hessian, or an old towel or t-shirt. It's important to make sure your worm blanket's moist. Now we're ready to feed our worms. At the start, you just want to feed your worms a handful of scraps every 1 to 2 weeks. As your worm farm matures, you'll be able to feed them more scraps more regularly. When feeding your worms, you want to peel back the blanket, place your food scraps down, and then cover them back over with the blanket. We'll now replace the lid and come back and check on them in 1 week to see if they need any more food or moisture. After your worm farm's been established for a few months, you can then swap the trays. We'll take our top tray off and switch it with our middle tray. We'll then replace our middle tray on the top, add our fruit and vegetable scraps to this, a new worm blanket, and then we're ready to put the lid on. Once that top tray is then full, you're then ready to harvest your worm castings, which is your solid fertilizer. So you're then going to rotate the trays again. Your oldest tray is going to be back on top. You will then remove the lid, because worms hate light, and stir around the contents of that top tray, chasing the worms down to the bottom tray because we don't want to lose any worms. After you've removed the lid for 1 to 2 days and all the worms seem to have gone down to the next tray, you're then ready to just spread those worm castings throughout your garden. It's important to regularly check the tap at the bottom of your worm farm for any worm tea, otherwise it can overfill with liquid and harm your worms. When feeding your worms, you only want to feed them fruit and vegetable scraps. You don't want to feed them any garden waste, any dairy products, citrus, garlic or onion.